Okay.
What's that?
You can, I don't want to, you can have this.
A game show.
That would be kind of entertaining.
Oh, yay, I am on. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for being here for this special panel, and a huge thank you to these guests. It's just so cool in terms of this little microcosm of the body of Christ at work and all the different ways God is at work in the world through different ages and experiences. So, engaging this question of vocation, I think society does us a disservice where we sometimes truncate vocation to just occupation, what we do for work or how we spend the bulk of our hours. But the Christian understanding and the Lutheran understanding of vocation is far bigger. If we often hear at Lent time and at any funeral service, we talk about our belonging to Christ, whether we live, whether we die, from Romans. But it's everything in between. And so Christ's claim on our life between the being born and the dying. And so it's can include all the roles in which we find ourselves: family member, friend, citizen, worker, all those pieces. And some of them we might be passionate about. Some might have been forced on us, like the sibling one didn't get to choose. And yet they are still vocation. And so this idea of our lives are integrated, and that even if we really enjoy one or really hate another, they might still be vocations that we are called to engage and hold in tension with each other. So I want to let these folks introduce themselves and maybe list 2 or 3 vocations that come to mind that you're holding in this moment in time. I let somebody,
I'm Jeff Kreis, and my vocations would be being a parent, husband, spouse, so being a family member is one. Another would be I really enjoy being outdoors, hiking and biking, which ties very well into being a family member with my wife, Cindy, who encourages me to that a lot. And then the other is being a pilot. And I did start off my career as a high school teacher for 9 years and switched over to being a pilot. So that's a little bit of the calling change.
Good morning. I'm Caitlin Thompson. A few of my vocations: I am a dietitian. I work at a dialysis unit. My second vocation is I've become a certified Gallup strength coach. So essentially the idea is that we harness and understand our innate strengths, and from that, further development, growth, and investment. So I've been working within my company on engagement and fulfillment in their career. And my third vocation is a mom. We have an 8 and 6-year-old girls and a 4-year-old little boy.
Good morning. I'm Andrew Jorgensen, and I think vocation is an evolving understanding for me, moving target, if you will. Some vocations, ways that's been a part of my life would be as a caregiver. I stepped into that role at an early age in my family, some health needs, so that definitely shaped my trajectory. I've been a teacher and worked in education, so that's been a big part of my calling. And then additionally, I work as a carpenter, a builder, so I'm constantly in people's homes, renovating and shaping their built environment. So.
My name is Evie Bauer. I think a big vocation that I have been in recently is definitely that I'm a performer. We just finished our final performance of Rock and Roll Revival last night. I was in that, so much fun. And I'm also on the speech team. I love just putting on shows and performing for other people. I'd say another one is definitely student because I'm a 10th grader over at Northfield High School. School is a big part of my life, whether I like it or not. And I think that just like having school is important.
I'm Ann Eder. One of my vocations is also performing. I'm a lifelong actress and now audiobook narrator, and I bring a lot of passion to that. I'm also an accountant, specifically specializing in taxes, and everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I do love taxes and I love my job. And I love being able to help people that way. A helper is definitely one of the things that really drives my world. And also, I'm a community member and a volunteer. I sit on several boards. I spend a lot of time volunteering, always trying to work to help make things a little bit better. Sometimes in this part of the world and sometimes in New Hampshire, where my parents live, and I spend a lot of time also involved in community out there.
Well, when I first was asked to be on this panel, I struggled with figuring out the correct definition of vocation. So initially I said, oh yeah, I'm an AV manager here. I'm super into audio engineering and live sound, and I do that throughout Northfield. But on a deeper look, one of my favorite things that I think I'm called to is just like learning in general. I love like learning about people's passions and like asking them questions about it and just like getting into the details about things that I wouldn't ordinarily know about. So I think that's one thing that I'm called to, in addition to I just love doing live sound. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Just from hearing, I didn't know that I had so many transitions in vocation, and maybe this sense of sometimes whether a formal role and career change or other maybe I think the role of a parent changes drastically when they're a certain age to when they get a little older, that vocation changes. So I'm curious if any folk would want to talk about a transition in vocation, what that experience was like, or emotions, joy. Was it a certainty or was it terrifying?
I have a fun story.
Is it on?
I had no idea what accounting was, really. I'd kind of done my dad's bookkeeping a little bit when I was a teenager, kept on the little spreadsheets, the little green spreadsheets. But I went to college for history, and I majored in medieval history. And I thought I was going to become a teacher, and I went to grad school to be an elementary school teacher. And I'd always passed my W-2 off to my dad because he had a CPA, because he was a self-employed. And then he's like, well, it's time for you to do your own taxes. And I sat down and I read all the instructions, and this was back in the day when you did them by hand, and you went to the library and you got the little book, and it was so much fun. And I'm halfway through my master's degree in elementary education, and I realized that that wasn't really what I wanted to do. I actually wanted to do taxes for people. I wanted to be a CPA. It took me 8 years. I waited until I'd had my third kid, and when Dilly was 1, I went back to school. I got an MBA in accounting. But I spent those 8 years excitedly doing my own taxes every year and doing my sister's taxes, but it hit me like a brick that it really just came out of nowhere, and I had no idea.
Thank you.
I think that as a student, especially in high school, just being a teenager is learning about your self-identity and just learning about who you are. And I think that definitely has a lot to do with transition and vocation. Just learning what you enjoy and what you're interested in. You kind of figure out what you want to do in your life as a teenager after high school.
I guess piggybacking off of you, I think I'm actively in the transition phase.
Okay.
So I think I'm still figuring that out. Again, I work as a dietitian, but my innate passion is in employee engagement and retention. So I think right now I'm relying on God and developing not only the tools that I need to be a better strength coach with employee engagement, but also the toolbox of trusting God's faith and that my path will be what He wants it to be. So putting it up in the air is a bit scary, but trusting in the foundation of my own interest as well as my faith.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess at work when some of my coworkers say, "Oh, how'd you get to where you're at now?" and I say, "Well, I started out as a high school teacher." I get a lot of funny looks. But it started out, I guess, for me is with having a cabin up north watching airplanes fly, and so there was always an interest with that. And then my dad was a high school counselor. Mom worked in the school, so I was very familiar with that. So that kind of led that way. But after graduating from college, or in college, I guess, my parents helped pay for my private pilot's license, so that continued to spur that interest. And then I still really liked flying, so I continued that as I was teaching. And then with the support of Cindy, we took our 4-month-old and 4-year-old up to Alaska and lived up there for 5 years and flew before continuing on with the flying. So a lot of big leaps of faith there, but had a very supportive wife and family the whole time. So that's how I got to where I'm at.
Thank you, guys. I don't want to cut off anybody, but there's no, I said that not every person had to respond to every single question. But something that I think is that's hard to capture in vocation is this sense of call, but that it's all not just about me, or that I feel good, that I'm satisfied necessarily, that there is this element, at least in a Christian understanding, of service to neighbor, that our vocations are for the sake of the neighbor and the world God loves. So I'm so excited, and I don't know if you've thought about your vocations in those ways, but if I phrase it that way, how would you describe how you see your vocation or one of these vocations serving the neighbor? Sam?
Well, I just finished, we just did Rock and Roll Revival, and I played a big part in that, working with the students, working on their vocal harmonies and helping with a bunch of miscellaneous things. But I spent a lot of time kind of coaching, teaching, and also being kind of just in a supportive role to help uplift these students so that they feel confident, that have everything that they need to be on that stage and perform well without anxieties. And I think a lot of that, I realized is super fulfilling to be able to see somebody else's growth, help them, be a part of that as well. But it is very much an individual journey that you just are lucky to be a part of and witness. And that's one thing that I'd say probably how I'd answer that, yeah.
Thank you. I think Andrew, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that's great, and I just wanted to follow up. I love how you led in with this, I think that's out of Luther. I went to seminary in my 20s, so that's part of my vocation, and I remember reading Luther on, I think, the bondage of the will and on vocation, and there's something he said in there that stuck with me the last 20 years, which was that vocation isn't primarily about productivity, although it will necessarily produce, and it's not.
Oh, hold it a little closer.
Sorry, the vocation isn't necessarily about productivity, though it will necessarily produce, and it's not primarily about satisfaction, though it will satisfy, but it is primarily about the neighbor. And I've thought a lot about that in the years as I've transitioned through different roles in my life, in my home, in my community. And now I very much see myself in my profession as a builder and a owner-operator of a small construction company as having this opportunity to see the people that God brings into my life as an opportunity to serve, to listen well, to try to understand, well, what do you want to do with your home, or what are you trying to achieve, and to do more than just the execution of that contract, but to, in essence, see them as my neighbor and do everything I can to help them achieve that stated goal. So.
Go ahead, Anne.
I
and then
see.
Eddie.
My audiobook narration is something that deliberately is set out to make books more accessible. I narrate exclusively queer fiction. Most queer people have not been able to see ourselves in literature, and by making these books more available, especially available to people who maybe can't focus well enough to read a paper book or an ebook, or who are blind or who have other issues, that make an audiobook more easily accessible for them. So getting these books out in the world, making them available to people, is really something that I feel very strongly about, and it's what drives that. I get paid a little tiny bit for it, but I don't, I deliberately use a very cut rate on that. I will frequently do royalty share with authors, anything to get a book out in the world that is going to help people see themselves in the literature.
I am so in rock and roll again. I think just being a castmate, being a teammate to my teams that I'm on, just in the groups, being a good friend, being an ally to other students, other members, just being supportive of your peers around you. I think that that's a big part of who I am. And
That's it.
I think one place that helps me navigate is understanding my why. And I'll give an example. This past Friday, I guess, let me back up. My why is I'm there for the patients, and I'm also there for my fellow dietitians and fellow teammates. And on Friday, we had a dietitian that was too busy, so I went up to a clinic up in the cities, and it was very busy, and I had so many other work responsibilities, and I wanted to feel resentful and frustrated, and I went back to my why. My why is to be there for my team, and secondly, to quiet my mind and connect with these patients. And so on the drive up there, my job is to connect with these patients, and they need someone, and my job is to sit there, quiet my mind, and open my heart and make a connection. And the day was very busy, but it was so fruitful because of centering into why I'm doing what I'm doing each day.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. And I just want to affirm how inspiring you guys being you, and sometimes not just as the support, but like shining and figuring out the skill behind all these jobs is also sometimes what helps others be at home in their own skin or lean into their own skills. I just was noticing that and in my awe over here. This was one of my favorite questions. Tell us something that has surprised you in one of your vocations. Or, yeah, just something that, I guess that we had the ton of bricks moment, but if there's other pieces, whether just, joy or something that you thought was going to be really easy because you loved it so much and wasn't, or, yeah.
I can add to the CPA thing. There's a whole lot of psychology involved in working with people and their taxes. And I had no clue. I had no clue, but it really has required me to dig deep on the psychological side of things. Money is
Stressful.
Money is very stressful and very emotional, and I had not understood or realized that when I went into this career.
Thank you for that insight. I feel like we could give you paragraphs on there, like resonates.
One thing that I have come to realize is it's really important to have faith in others. And even if your initial reaction might be maybe less hopeful or more disheartening, when you're working with us, like for instance for students, right? I had some days where it's just like, oh, this is really hard, you know? I feel like I don't have the right words to help these students succeed. But really, if you just trust the process and you really believe it all ends up okay. You just have to be patient with people, and it's a skill. It's a skill. I think something you have to learn.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if it's a surprise, but navigating going in from one vocation to the next 24/7. So having a job and then being a mom, they're all very fruitful, but it's exhausting as well. So again, I think it's going back to your why, and I think it's having great support systems, setting healthy boundaries, and being comfortable in who you are, and finding vocations that you truly enjoy, I think are really important.
Thank you.
I think that every day through our vocations, we have new surprises just to see how we can adapt with them every day. Like, sometimes I will, have a really good day at school where I feel like I've been so productive all day, whereas other days I'll just flop. But I think every day there's new surprises regarding our vocations, and it can really be a great learning process.
I think Andrew needs a mic. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just agree with everything that's being shared, and that posture.
Just a little closer there.
Oh, I don't do this very often, if you can't tell. Just the posture of being willing to experience something unforeseen in your work in a day-to-day basis or in your relationships, and rather than see it as a setback, embrace it as an opportunity. That's been really powerful for me. There's always twists and turns when you're on a building site, but sometimes some of the most beautiful results come out of what you didn't initially see on paper. And if you can pivot and you can embrace it as an opportunity to bring something forth that's beautiful and will be that much more satisfying to everyone around, it's very, very rewarding, but it requires a posture that doesn't freak out and think, what am I doing? This is all coming apart at the seams. And I can apply that to my relationships with my children and my spouse, and just seeing opportunity in the unforeseen opportunities that come.
I'm noticing that description, I think, really gets to the heart of the idea of vocation. When it's occupation, we know exactly what we're supposed to do and how to do it and what's expected, all those things. When it's vocation, there is this element of openness, and is the call still talking, and how is it changing, or the directions are being modified. That's one of the things that I appreciated about this Nourishing Vocation project that we've been going through, is that checking in. You said, what is my why, but what are our values? And then we had openness and call, sort of this, what else am I supposed to be listening to and taking in? And then I think even where we're giving our attention, and I want to come back to the transitions between sometimes vocations that we have just within one day. And then regrets, like sometimes is one way that those pivots or things happen. So I just was noticing resonance with the practice we've been trying to do as individuals and as a congregation. Was there any other surprises that wanted to come to voice? Okay. I want to, that we talked about big transitions, but maybe little transitions within a day. How do you navigate that? Is it a conscious thing, an unconscious thing? Does it go better one way or the other?
Well, one thing I've noticed is after a day of work, and a lot of times, a lot of the audio stuff I do is late at night, I'll get home and immediately my best friend's in New York, so we play video games together. My girlfriend goes to school in Hawaii. She's actually here today. She's here for spring break. But a lot of times it's kind of like a nighttime where I get to actually have that socialization. But I'm still tired from work, and it takes me a beat to kind of move away from the work mode and focus mode and actually allow myself to just be a friend and be a fun person versus, working. So that's a transitional period coming from a vocation to another vocation, a friend, right? It takes a little bit of time, but it's kind of fun.
I think for me it's setting and implementing healthy boundaries. So I think in the workplace, having my team and managers understand my priorities, which have always been my family and my kids. And as I've been able to clearly communicate that, it's been received really well. On the other side, when I am at work, I should give 110%, and that should be expected. And again, I have a great support system that if I need to be at work for a certain situation, I have people that can help. So I think communicating on all parties where your priorities are and setting those healthy boundaries. It's a field trip day, I'm gonna be there, or this is a really important meeting, I need to ask for help. And that's helped me understand what's important to me, but also the people around me support me.
Thank you.
Well, go on.
I was going to say, for me, some of the challenge could be going away for work. I call it a trip. So I go for 4 days or something, then when I get home, then Cindy has had her way of doing things every day, and I might be tired like Sam is or something, and so then how do I shift from work, I'm tired, to now I am a family member and I need to be there. And sometimes the best way is to let me take a nap for a while and then go ahead and then to do that challenge of being back to a family member.
Yeah.
I find my physical space really helps. So oftentimes I will take, I have a board meeting this afternoon that is on Zoom, and unfortunately I'm going to have to take it from my office, which is a problem for me because normally if I'm in my office I'm working, and I prefer to take my board meetings from home at my kitchen table. But anyway, such is life. So I'm going to bring my knitting with me, because that's going to help me pull me out of my work mode, and then I'm going to just knit while I do my board meeting because it's a lot of listening. And that, when I find that I can adjust my space or adjust my physical self a little bit, via knitting or via standing versus sitting, things like that, it helps me get into the right headspace, because tax returns and preparing for a summer literary conference are two very different things.
I so love and we can hear more. I am really appreciating that these different vocations that we're thinking about, it's not like a mental toggle or not a pure mental toggle between things. We are embodied creatures. And so I really appreciated being sensitive. Sometimes we need sleep. Sometimes we might need a change in physical space. Or when you can't have that boundary, to have the knitting. That's so cool, to remind yourself that you are embodied, and that sometimes it's those cues. It might be the cup of tea or the dog walk that helps you transition between what role you're putting on. As a pastor, I just have to say, sometimes it's clothes too, like whether I'm wearing my collar or not, or a stole or the robe on Sunday. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah. But that can be like a suit coat or something like that. Evie, were you going to say something? Oh, okay. I'm curious if the assembly, yes, please.
Just learning more about ourselves, and I have tells on a job site, and I know that when I'm losing my pencils, that I need to step back and have a sandwich or something. Or if I can no longer keep a few measurements in my head, it's like, rather than getting increasingly frustrated, step away, get back a little bit of perspective, take a break, because it's easy to get so involved in the work that we're doing And I think if work becomes a central focus in any given moment, there's so much additional stuff that's happening that gets shoved to the periphery, and you can't see it, and you can't even be aware of it because you're so spun out and maybe even not being as productive as you could be were you able to just listen to your body and take a step back.
And I love that being aware of your body in terms of like the tell, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
those are my tell.
I wondered if the assembly has any questions for our panelists. I wanting to open it up. Questions of vocation. Any thoughts out there, or wanting to make sure I don't monopolize them?
It's been particularly interesting to hear those of you who have changed occupations talk about how that change went about. Because I started out as a teacher and ended up as a computer programmer. Talk about a change of occupation and a focus on people and so forth. But it's been fun to hear others of you share that information.
Thank you. Yeah, lots of resonance with these stories. Oh, Darlene.
Have any of you ever faced an ethical dilemma in any of your vocations, and what helped you to deal with that?
Thank you. It's like a hot mic, like hot potato.
Taxes often come with an ethical dilemma. There are people who want you to say something on a tax return that is not correct, that's fraudulent. And I was raised to be a little bit of a pleaser, and that is in direct conflict with telling somebody that, no, I'm sorry, we won't do a tax return for you this way. It was a learning process for me. I used to get super awkward about it and be like, I can't, and now I have no qualms saying, I'm sorry, we cannot report a return this way. I will not sign it, we will not file it, you will need to go find somebody else to work with. But it was a learning process because I wanted to be a helper, and I wanted to help, and I wanted things to go well, and I was floored the first time somebody asked me to put something on their tax return that wasn't true. And there's a thought that, oh, it happens all the time, but no, not in my office, it doesn't.
Thank you.
I don't think I've had any specific ethical problem other than when you have something that is wrong with an airplane that needs to be fixed, and you've got 200 people that want to go on vacation or someplace else, and it's like, I'm very sorry, but this has to be fixed. And sometimes for some people they may think it's something very minor, or if the weather is bad at your destination but it's beautiful where you want to take off from and you're delayed, they're not understanding it. It's just our best ability to tell them in a nice polite way of why we are delaying. It's for your safety and ours, and for the most part, if you seem to communicate with everybody, then everything is all right. They'll at least cool down. The worst thing is just to sit there, delay, and not say anything. So that's probably the closest that I've run into.
I'm just curious what airplane you fly.
Oh,
What airplane I fly an Airbus 320 out of Minneapolis. Yep.
very cool.
I think working in the dialysis unit, we have a lot of sick patients, and their health can oscillate up and down. And there comes a time of the definition of quality of life. Do I continue dialysis 3 days a week for 4 hours? Is this what I should be doing? And sometimes the patient has a different perspective than the family, or sometimes the patient isn't cognitively aware of what decisions to make. And so that is a big piece that we use our whole team, the social worker, the doctor, the nurses, to come to a conclusion, because that's obviously probably one of the biggest identities that we have as a human, is what is quality of life. And I think that definition is to the person themselves. And so I think having a listening ear and being intentional to gather all the pieces to help support that is really important.
Yeah. But thank you. Such interesting, what a beautiful but messy world God has. And thank goodness that we're not in it alone, and that we have communities and teams, but even for all these different situations you guys have named and navigating. Yeah. Other questions or more comments on this theme? I'm wondering which one, or something you wish I've asked. Who inspired us? Okay, who inspired you?
Because I want to talk about my Nana.
Okay.
She was one of the kindest and most interesting humans. She had a broad variety of interests. She was welcoming of everybody. And I have to say, when I saw that question on the sheet, she was the first person I thought of, because I know that she supported me in anything and everything I ever wanted to do, and all of her grandchildren. She was equally supportive of all of us and of her 2 sons. And her zest for life and her willingness to get out there, and her ability to welcome anybody who came into her home. And that included, when I was a teen, my best friend, whose grandparents had all passed away, and so my grandparents were sort of her pseudo-grandparents. We went down to Florida to visit them. And Nana was equally wonderful with everybody. And that was what inspired me as I was choosing careers, as I was becoming a community member and volunteer, as I was deciding, yes, I can make time in my life to narrate audiobooks, all of these pieces. Nana's always just sort of been this little voice in the back of my head.
Thank you.
I think I definitely am motivated by a lot of my friends. Them being there for me helps a lot, but I think my biggest inspiration is probably my mom right there in the front, because she's always encouraging me to do everything and driving me places.
Thank you.
Doesn't get much better than that. I've been blessed to have a lot of great role models, and the older I get, and as a parent, I reflect on how much has been poured into me, and I feel greater and greater responsibility to be mindful of the young people around me, even people who work for me, trying to take the time to see the person in front of me. My late uncle was an incredible builder, and I used to work with him on the weekends when I was at seminary. So I'd drive up to the mountains and go to some remote job site, and he was the type of craftsman that built everything from scratch. And he was always telling me, slow down, Andrew. Just slow down. And those words come back to me often when I'm feeling stressed and I'm trying to get something done and I'm racing the clock. Just slow down. Do the right thing. Use the right materials. And if I'm going to err on any side in my work at this point, I credit him with helping me remember that it's not so much about racing to the finish line, it's how we get there.
Yeah, I would say my parents are probably my biggest influence. As I transitioned from a teenager to young adulthood to adulthood, what I appreciated was the foundation with my autonomy. I think that's a big piece. I had the tools to be a hard worker and a good person and to be faithful, but I was able to choose how I wanted that to look like. We try to go to church, but to me, church and God lives within us in our everyday. So I'm able to parent and work in my job with the roots, but who I am, and I appreciate that gift.
Yeah, the theme of parents is definitely one with reading. My dad had taken some flying lessons well before I was even thought of. So him still keeping those books in the basement and me looking through those, mom and dad both helping to pay for the flying lessons to continue that. Cindy to continue to help support the idea as I was substitute teaching, and then moving. So all of those three people were a big inspiration to where I'm at.
Yeah.
For me, my best friend's dad, Ray Kudre, who also happened to be the producer for the show Rock and Roll, but also plays in a band, Bo Aylen, who's a member here. He's also in that band, Fred the Bear. So Ray Kudre, he has lifted me up and provided so many opportunities for me. He's really been a big supporter for me and kind of like a cheerleader almost. He inspires me with basically everything he does. He just has an incredible work ethic, and he goes above and beyond. Even when he's already done his part, he's still going above and beyond, and it's inspiring to me. And yeah, I just appreciate all the support that he gives to me. So I hope to be able to pass that torch on, at some point when I'm able to. But yeah.
Thank you all so much. My sort of closing comment would be how the diversity of talents and giftedness just on these 6 chairs is so exciting. And yet there's this commonality of sense of call and this love of neighbor. And it came across like a quote that I really liked, that God calls us in love to be in a living relationship with God. We are called to someone, not to something. And so, again, even as much fruit as you are bearing in your different roles and vocations of your life, that there's, as you were talking about who inspired you, that it wasn't that this relationship and in like church speak, that those people were being Christ to you. And I am just intrigued by that, but that idea that we use our giftedness, but ultimately we are called to someone and not something. Thank you guys all for listening, and now we need to let the sanctuary transition for our bells leading off us in second worship. Guys, thank you so much. You were so articulate.